All right, and we're back for another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break. Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, and Inside Sports Fantasy Football. We truly appreciate you listening to all of our great shows, and if you can, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, subscribe, follow, or do anything that you can to support us right here at the Lakers Fast Break and our new home at the Hoopheads Podcast Network, it is sincerely appreciated. Check out all the great shows that they have at hoopheadspod.com. Well, this is about what we were expecting performances like today, with LeBron out of the lineup indefinitely with a high ankle sprain, AD still out of the lineup, Marc Gasol not in there. Unfortunately, this is probably what we're going to be getting a lot of the time, because the Lakers, they gave it a gallant effort for 3 quarters, but just ran out of gas, as the Lakers did unfortunately lose 111-94. And again, it just came down to just not having enough bodies that could go ahead and put the ball in the basket. Offensively, we're challenged even more. 20% from the three-point area. That's not going to get it done. Only 5 made three-pointers all game long. Got to hand it to, again, Montrezl Harrell, 23 points, 10 rebounds, 10-13. THT, not the greatest shooting day in the world, 6-16, but he's putting up shots, 17 points for him. Schroeder, very efficient again, 22 points, but really as a distributor and a playmaker, couldn't really get it done. Only, I think, 3 assists. And Kuzma, again, a poor shooting performance back-to-back. It's 5-16 for 13 points. Not exactly the greatest numbers. Everybody else, I mean, Wes Matthews, that got the big donut. KCP, again, with a disappointing performance. Alex Caruso struggling as well. So the offense is a major issue. And with AD and LeBron out of the lineup, it's really going to be hard for us to manufacture points. But here today to talk about today's game, and also the hopes we have that the Lakers might have some semblance of the reality as far as the rest of the season is concerned, at least for the next few weeks, is a good man indeed. You got to check out what he's doing today at medium.com on his own website, and then also be part of the conversation today at Lakerholics.com. It is my good friend, Mr. Laker Tom. And Laker Tom, at least UCLA is winning.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's we're going to see another, at least in the minimum, in the best case scenario, 10 more of these games. In the worst case scenario, 20 of them. There's only 29 games left in the season, so it's, this is a game, these games when you don't have LeBron and you don't have Anthony in the lineup, really tell you what the NBA is all about. And Eddie Johnson had it right when near the end of the game. I was listening, obviously, to the League Pass version of the game, which has the Suns announcers. And Eddie Johnson's always been a favorite of mine.
Oh, I love him on Sirius XM. Absolutely.
Yeah, I listen to him on Sirius XM all the time too. And he basically said, the league is a league of stars, and stars are what carry you. And the Suns had their versions of the stars in, and the Lakers didn't have their versions of the stars. I think you could say that the closest thing that the Lakers have to a third star at this point in time is Montrezl Harrell. He was a man among the boys on our team, basically. I like how he competes. I like how he's, even against a 7-footer like Ayton, he's getting in there. He's fighting. He shot 10 for 13, got 10 rebounds. He did his part. The problem is that other players on the Lakers team didn't do their part. We saw, Kuzma couldn't hit his shots. He at least made 6 assists. We saw Talen Horton-Tucker do his usual thing. He got a couple of shots blocked by Ayton and so forth, but an aggressive guy. Caruso came through with a couple of good plays, a couple of good cuts to the basket and so forth. But the problem is that other than LeBron and AD, we don't have anybody on this team who can really create his own shot, create shots for others, and really turn games around. Schroeder had a pretty good game, and he's probably the closest thing we have to a playmaker, but he's not, a 30% 3-point shooter, and he's not a big assist guy. He's not really a point guard. He's a combo guard. So the Lakers basically, you may not want to hear it, Gerald, but there's going to be at least 10 more of these games. And depending on what happens with LeBron and AD, maybe 20 more. And to me, I still see the silver lining being that anybody watching the Lakers play tonight, they did make a valiant effort. They stayed close most of the game. The Suns shot pretty well. Of course, Ayton is shooting over 6'5" guys in the post, and that makes it pretty easy. But they hit their threes, they've got a guy in Booker who's better than anybody else that was on the floor for the Lakers. Booker's really, truly a guy I would classify in the superstar category. And one superstar to none basically creates that situation.
What I want to ask you now is the big question. With LeBron out indefinitely, AD out another 2-3 weeks possibly, this could be a situation, like you said, where it gets ugly and gets ugly fast. And the thing is, the Lakers right now are in third place in the Western Conference. As we talk about this, 28-15, when AD and LeBron are both in the lineup once again, which could be at this point, 20 games from now? And, this could be something where LeBron is going to be out for a couple months. He's probably going to be available maybe right around when the team gets ready for the playoffs, so to speak. If they're eligible for the playoffs, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, how ugly can this thing get? Can we be talking about an 8th or a 9th seed possibly by the time that LeBron gets back to the floor?
Yeah, I think that's the reality, what you're looking at. We might have a few, listen, there's enough character in this team and there's enough talent in this team that we can beat some of the inferior teams that we're going to play. And we might even be able to pull off an upset here or there. But basically, we're going to go into almost every game as an underdog.
Yeah.
And if you look at that realistically, right now, I always look at the standings by the number of games that you're behind in the loss column. So right now, we've got 15 losses. That means that we are 2 games ahead of the 7th place Spurs. 2 games ahead of the 7th place Spurs. We are 5 games ahead of the 10th place Grizzlies. Now, the significance of those are that the first 6 teams automatically make the playoffs. The 7th and 8th teams and the 9th and 10th teams have a do-or-die game. And then the winners of those 2 games, the losers of those 2 games, basically will play another do-or-die game. And so you're basically looking at a 2-game play-in, win-or-go-home type of situation. And the Lakers right now, unless we get good news and LeBron and AD come back sooner, are very likely going to be in the 9th or 10th spot by the time the playoffs start. And if we're in that spot, boy, it's going to be a hard road to hoe. The good news in this whole thing is that it's 2 days to the trade deadline, and there are things that the Lakers can do. We desperately need a true point guard who can create plays by himself, create plays for other players, and get the team going. Doesn't necessarily have to be, it's got to be somebody who can dish out 5 assists per game, who will play well with Schroeder. And you're not going to trade Harrell to get to that person. You're not going to trade Schroeder because otherwise you're not really doing anything to improve the team. So the guy that's got to be sent is probably KCP. He's not enough that anybody's going to give us anything good back, which means that you're probably going to have to use maybe THT in the draft pick that we have for 2027, because that's all we've got to get somebody who can be a good point guard. The guy I like is Lonzo Ball. They're asking for a starting player or a good young player in order to get Lonzo out of the Pelicans, and I think that he's the logical choice. And then the other thing, we obviously need his size. And hopefully Drummond, the word right now is that Drummond's going to get bought out, and the Lakers appear to be the favorites, although not a cinch thing to land him. So we have to look at this situation, and I think the Lakers, a game like tonight only really stamps it in your mind that the Lakers players, other than LeBron and AD, may be good enough to win a championship with the two of them if they were in perfect health, and if we had a good seeding, and if we were playing well before the playoffs started. But considering the fact that they're both having these types of injuries that you don't know when they're going to be ready to play until they're ready to play. I mean, these are lingering situations in both situations. And it's not like you can plan ahead. So you got to plan for the worst at this point in time. And I think Rob Pelinka has to go out and be aggressive. And as much as I love THT, he's not going to be the difference in a championship this year, whereas somebody we could trade him for could be. And as much as I've been loyal with KCP, I don't see him pulling out and suddenly turning his season around. He's lost his confidence completely. He's a non-factor in the game. He's down to 8.5 points per game. Your starting championship shooting guard is averaging 8.5 points, and in the last 25 games is probably shooting 35%. Other than that hot start, his numbers have just been bolstered by that, and by the fact that he's not shooting at all in the last recent 3 weeks. So it's almost as if, he's almost like a guy refusing to take a half-court shot because it'll lower his percentages. He just knows that the shot is not going in. The team is in trouble, and the season is in trouble, in my opinion, and it's up to Rob Pelinka to put his big boy pants on and make some moves to get the Lakers back into the situation. Otherwise, we're going to probably be in the play-in tournament. And when you're in the play-in tournament, if you thought it was embarrassing for the Clippers to go out last year in the second round, it's going to be even more embarrassing if the Lakers don't even make the playoffs.
Well, there you go. The thoughts of Laker Tom right there from Lakerholics.com. Be part of the conversation today at Lakerholics.com. I will say this, that before we head on out, my friend, I know you're still going to cover a lot of things this week with the trade deadline. I'm also looking as well to go ahead and cover the trade deadline out there, because it's always the most interesting time of the year. For me and for you, it's NBA draft and NBA trade deadline. Those are always the great times of year for NBA fans. Free agency, playoffs, always these fun times. So it is coming up on us this year, and this week it's going to be a very fun time. Even if there's not any big names that are going to be traded, there's always some fun trades that go down. But before we head on out, I want you to go ahead and let everybody know what you're working on at Lakerholics.com.
Well, I've been really following the trade rumors and following the different aspects of it. I think before the injury to LeBron, the general consensus among the media was that the Lakers weren't going to make a big move. They were going to basically put all their marbles into hoping that the buyout market turns out to be good, and maybe they could, end up getting Andre Drummond and maybe Otto Porter Jr. and maybe even Victor Oladipo. There's been talk that the Rockets might not be able to trade him. So, but we're in a tough situation. I mean, it's not an easy. Even when I go through, and I'm pretty, I'm obviously, as an amateur, you're willing to trade people a lot without having the inside information that Rob Pelinka and the Lakers have, without knowing exactly what other teams are willing to offer. But I can see that it's a typical situation, because the key trading chips that we have, what are they? They're Kuzma, who's got a poison pill situation. There's Harrell, who basically, if we trade him, it could only be for a center. There's Schroeder, who, if we trade him, that could only be for a point guard. And then there's KCP, who's playing so poorly that he's become salary ballast instead of an asset that you can really trade. And that leaves you with THT, your shining, jewel, your only young player, so to speak. and the draft pick that's 6 years away, excuse me. So Rob Pelinka doesn't have a whole lot of bullets in his gun, but we'll have to just see what he can come up with, The good part of it is that there are a lot of teams who are looking to move a lot of players, and I do expect that there's going to be a lot of changes. I think we saw that during the free agency period before the start of the season. We saw it at the trade deadline last year, and I think we're going to see it even more this year. Teams are looking at the future. They're trying. A lot of teams are looking to trade salaries that they've got committed in the future in order to clean up their books, simply because this league has become very much more a 2-year window for almost everybody. Nobody seems to really want to be locking in. I mean, you look at a team like the Celtics that everybody sort of thought these guys were going to be so successful because they had accumulated all of these assets. And then you watch 2 or 3 years go by when they didn't really take advantage of those assets, and suddenly the assets are gone. The league has accelerated, and we're in the midst of what is sort of an arms race right now. That's teams wanting to take advantage of the fact that the Lakers may have injured themselves out of being the top lead, and now there's an opportunity. There's an opening that a lot of teams are looking to take advantage of. So there's going to be a lot of competition that the Lakers are going to have to fend with in order to try to pull off the trades that they need to improve the lineup. Everybody gets in love with the same players that have won a championship. But I don't think Rob Pelinka is in that position. I don't think, for example, the fact that KCP is a clutch client is going to hold much if the Lakers want to trade, because he's going to be the salary ballast in any trade that we make. So, you just have to hope as a Laker fan that you trust in Rob to do the job. He's done a great job so far, and I wished we'd gotten more shooting, more 3-point volume shooting at the start of in the last off season. That's an error that we're going to have to fix. In retrospect, I think that you were probably more right than I was. I was hopeful that Gasol and Harrell would be able to give us better rim protection and defense than they have. And that hasn't turned out as well as I expected. I think Harrell has been magnificent on offense, especially since we've started using him in a more intelligent manner, sort of copying what the Clippers did with him and running a lot of pick and rolls. And I saw some good movement in the second half when we cut it down to 8 points a couple of times. What we don't have, though, is we don't have the guy when you cut it down to 8 points and you get the ball back and you go down the court. We don't have the guy that we can give the ball to make sure that we get that points and get 2 more points or 3 more points and get it down to 5 or 6 points so that you can really put pressure on. And at the same time, at the other end, when you're playing as small as you are and they've got somebody like Ayton and a superstar like Booker, it's pretty hard to get a stop. You don't have the size to really contend inside. And it was one of those nights, too, where every time we seemed to tip a ball, it would go to a 3-point shooter who was wide open. So it's, we'll see what happens in the next couple of days. It's going to be exciting. I guess our next game is Monday, Wednesday.
No, it can't be Monday. That'd be 3 days in a row, my friend. That's not.
Oh, okay.
That's not a thing. But
so the 20. What is it? The 23rd is the trade deadline, which is Tuesday.
They're at New Orleans on.
They're at New Orleans on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Gee, I'd love to see Lonzo in a Laker uniform on Tuesday night.
You and your infatuation with the balls, but again,
listen. Lonzo is a
BBB.
Lonzo is the perfect fit for this team for a lot of reasons.
And I'm sorry to hear about the news as far as
that's terrible about
LaMelo. LaMelo Ball suffering a fractured wrist or a fractured bone in his wrist, and it looks like his season is done.
And maybe his Rookie of the Year award, too.
Yeah, maybe his Rookie of the Year award. We'll have to wait and see on that. But again, Laker Tom has a lot of articles on the queue coming up this week, and we'll see with the trading deadline if Rob Pelinka does put on his big boy pants. We'll see if that happens. We'll see if there's any changes that are made. Damian Jones was let go. He was not retained, which I think was something, irregardless of whether LeBron was going to be healthy or not healthy, was something that I think was.
Yeah, they didn't want to. They would have had to commit to him for the rest of the year.
And I don't think
they up a roster spot, and they can't afford to do that at this point in time.
No, he's not worth it, unfortunately. Nice kid, but just not enough strength, and there's just really outside of a little bit of rim protection, couldn't give you much more. But again, the Lakers unfortunately came up short today. Very gallant effort, but 111-94. Not enough shooting, 20% from the three-point area, under 50% from the field, and under 75% from the free throw line. That adds up to a very bad game equation-wise. And again, like you said, DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker, over 20 points apiece. Very solid game from Phoenix. And again, they kicked it into gear in the fourth quarter, and that's all they had to do. But again, we will be back over the course of the next week to talk about everything going on with the trade deadline. We'll obviously be back after the Lakers game on Tuesday at New Orleans, who just won at Denver, which is a very impressive win. So we don't even know which New Orleans team we're going to get, because they're a Jekyll and Hyde team for sure. So we might be their trap game.
And there'll be changes by then, because I think most of the moves that are going to be made will be made by the time we have the podcast.
I don't know. I'm thinking the day after.
What is the deadline? Is it a certain
Thursday? It's Thursday.
It's the 24th. It's 23rd, I thought.
25th. It's Thursday, the 25th.
So it's midnight on Thursday, the 20th?
No, it's actually like 1 p.m., 12 or 1 p.m. Our time out in the West Coast. So it's, I think they allow for anybody that's, trying to conduct a trade at that point in time to go a little bit over, but I think it's 12 or 1 p.m. on our time on Thursday. So yeah, I say Wednesday is going to be the day that a lot of action is happening. And even on Thursday, there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of small trades there as well. So go ahead and stay tuned to us right here at the Lakers Fast Break, but we will be coming back at you starting on Tuesday for the Lakers and New Orleans. Plus, we'll be coming back with some specials on Wednesday. We're going to come back with a trade deadline special, and also on Thursday with thoughts, because the Lakers are also playing on Thursday. They will be at home against Philadelphia on Thursday. So we'll go ahead and wrap up the trade deadline for you on Thursday as well. But again, stay tuned to us for all the latest action, and we thank you so much for listening and watching. Once again, check us out on the Hoopheads Podcast Network. Check all the great shows that they have at hoopheadspod.com. Don't forget to be part of the conversation at Lakerholics.com today. And then also, Pop Culture Cosmos, we dropped another show. So if you like your pop culture, go ahead and check out the latest episode at Pop Culture Cosmos as well. But again, the Lakers didn't, unfortunately, pull it out in Phoenix. They fell a little short, 111-94 against the Phoenix Suns. But we will be back on Tuesday night to wrap up the game right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.